to another episode of the Top Attorneys of North America podcast. Today's guest is someone who has truly seen the courtroom from every angle. Frank Cservenyak, who is now a personal injury attorney in Joliet, Illinois. Frank has prosecuted a murder case, defended a murder case, and later stood beside families as a personal injury attorney fighting for justice in wrongful death cases. Very few attorneys can say they've worn all the legal hats: prosecutor, defense attorney, and civil trial lawyer. And even fewer can say they've done so at the highest level. Frank, welcome to the show. It's an honor to have you.
Thanks for having me, Sal. I look forward to talking with you this afternoon, and hopefully we'll impart a little wisdom to anyone that listens to this outstanding podcast.
Perfect. I always like to start. What inspired you, or what was the driving force to become an attorney all of those years ago?
Yeah, for me, it's pretty simple. Unfortunately, my parents were divorced, and that was at a time when divorce wasn't glamorized, and it certainly was really hard on the women. My mother was no exception. So she was raising three of us without a father. Thankfully, we had good family support. But often, too many times, I saw my mom either pushed around or not listened to and almost ignored at times. And I thought, this isn't right. And one day, I'm going to be a lawyer and I am going to represent people so they can be heard and they don't have to be abused, be neglected, or be ignored.
If I can ask, when you first entered the legal profession, did you ever imagine that your career would span so many different roles within the justice system?
No, I think when you come out of law school, you have, very limited notion of what you think is going to be your career path. Maybe you saw it in a movie, or maybe you had a family friend, or maybe you just had a notion of what it might be like. And, remarkably, if you keep your eyes open and if you keep your mind open, there's so many wonderful opportunities that come your way. And I was very fortunate to start out as a prosecutor, and I think it was a great way for me, and I think it's a great way for many young attorneys to begin their career because there's a lot of structure and there's a lot of responsibility. And I think that you can do a lot of good for your community.
Yes, sir. I'm glad that you did mention that, because that segues into my next question. As you stated early in your career, you did work as a prosecutor. How did, what drew you to that role initially? What did it teach you about responsibility and justice?
Well, I had an uncle that was a U.S. attorney and then later was a magistrate judge, and was very fond of him. And obviously, he was very fond of me. And he was very key in also convincing me, in which he didn't have to try too hard to become a lawyer. But we always talked about prosecuting and giving back to the community. So I thought that was just a great way to start the career path along. And it's something that I enjoyed doing. I think it's a great responsibility when you have an opportunity to make sure that your community is doing the right thing and that not only the defendants, but all of the community is being treated fairly in court.
Yes, sir. And as I did mention in my introduction, you have prosecuted a murder case, later defended one, experiences that most attorneys only see from one side. How did standing on opposite sides of the courtroom shape your understanding of truth, fairness, due process?
Well, it's really an interesting journey because when you start out as a prosecutor, some of us do and some of us don't realize just how much power you actually have. And so, you have to be careful with it. But on the same hand, you have that responsibility to the community to make sure that bad guys are taken off the streets. But that opportunity to see these cases from both sides and experience both sides of a case really get to the heart of what being a good attorney is, and that is doing your due diligence, your investigative work, being prepared, and making sure that you have some type of emotional connection with your clients in your case. Otherwise, you're really not doing the job of a good attorney. You're just kind of facilitating. So I think it's really important that you have to have empathy for the people you represent. And that's different from sympathy. I'm talking about truly understanding what they're going through so that you can understand that and impart that to a jury or a judge or another fact finder. Because if you're not doing that, you're really not completing the essence of what it means to be an attorney and to represent individuals who truly need your help.
Yeah. Was there a moment when defending a client fundamentally changed how you viewed the prosecution's role, or even vice versa?
Well, it's interesting when you do take on that other role. I didn't necessarily want to do criminal defense at first. I thought it was kind of contrary to the job I did as a prosecutor, but the firm I was with at the time slowly kind of convinced me that it was okay. And I realized it was okay because I took the opportunity to see from the other side and say, listen, while maybe my guy's guilty and maybe he did some horrible things, the state has the duty, the federal government has the duty or obligation to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. And that is something we can't take for granted in our society. It's really easy to make an accusation, but can you prove it beyond a reasonable doubt in court with competent, believable, credible evidence? And if you do those things, then the system works. So part of your job as a defense attorney is to make sure the system works by doing those things, right? So it was an eye-opening experience to see that from the other side and say, all right, I have an obligation to my client to make sure that the state, the prosecutor, can actually prove their case.
You know, did that background in criminal law, both being a prosecutor or a criminal defender, does that influence how you approach juries, or I know insurance companies today?
Yeah, I think it does because I think I look at it from the position that we have the better position, that we're right, and that we're doing something that's good, that we're trying to help someone who's been the victim of someone's negligence. Sometimes it's reckless conduct, even, uh, and make them whole again. And that's not such an easy thing to do, and it's hard to convince other people that their plight is so bad that they should be compensated with money. So that's the real essence of making sure that you can explain to your fellow citizens, jurors, judges, arbitrators, why your client should be compensated and fully compensated, right? So that's always the key in looking at any of these cases or anything we do as attorneys.
Yes. So pleading your case for, as a prosecutor or as a criminal defense attorney, transitioned or segued well into personal injury. I know that, again, you did transition into personal injury, wrongful death litigation. What motivated that shift?
Well, if you look at the legal landscape and you look at just how expensive it is for most people, there's almost a gate or a door that's locked for most people to have access to justice and to be able to go to court. And I joke with my clients when I meet them for the first time, when I'm explaining the contingent fee agreement, or they can pay me hourly at a rate that most nobody can afford. I mean, only maybe the top 1% or the Fortune 500 companies, but you're looking at fees from attorneys in the $4,000 range per hour. So none of the people I represent could ever possibly afford representation. And that would be wrong if we didn't have a system for them to be allowed to go to court and have somebody who's competent and cares about them and plead their case.
How how does representing families who have lost loved ones differ emotionally and professionally from criminal cases?
Well, there's a huge difference. I mean, you are really in a position where the family now has had a sudden change in the family dynamic, and they're going through such a stressful and painful time. So I feel it's your job as the attorney to not only guide them through the legal maze that they have to go through, but help to make sure that they are getting the counseling and the treatment that they need so that they can move forward from this horrific event. So I think from seeing the some of the awful things as a prosecutor, even on the criminal defense side, that just destroy families, that just destroy human beings, or maybe their life takes a wrong path. So we have to make sure that there's an opportunity for them to get a second chance. So I think it's really important when you see that, you have to look for the good and you have to really make sure that that's what you're doing for your client and their families. Hopefully, turning things around where, yeah, it was a horrible loss and things are bad and we certainly miss that person, but now we have to pick up the pieces and move forward because you have to. Life goes on. And that's the tragedy, right? You're going on without that loved one sitting at the dinner table anymore.
A lot of emotion.
No
uh,
question about that.
yeah, and I know that you have fought for families in wrongful death cases. The stakes couldn't be higher. What responsibility do you feel when someone entrusts you with a story that like we both said is pretty painful?
Well, it's a tremendous responsibility, and I think it's one that, you know, really it kind of hits home and you do think about the families quite a bit and you replay the scenarios in your mind because you want to make sure you're not missing something. You want to make sure that you're putting your best evidence forward, but you also want to make sure that you understand the family dynamics in what the family is truly missing, right? I mean, past the obvious things, you really have to get to know the family. You have to understand them and have to realize that their loss is just more than one person. It affects the whole family now is struggling with a loss. So all of those things are a tremendous responsibility that you take on. And you want to make sure that the family can put the pieces back together as best they can and start moving forward.
Yeah. Do you have a tough time letting it go? Is there some cases that stick with you longer than others?
Oh, there's no doubt. I mean, there's times when you wake up on a Saturday morning or something and you're looking out the window and you think, geez, I wonder how the Smith family is doing, or I wonder how the Joneses are doing, and we have good relationships with a lot of our clients, even after the cases, and we'll talk and we'll share Christmas cards and things like that. Um, but you do think about it, and you really want to make sure that you did your very best for that family and give them every opportunity to move on in life. I think that's so important because no one wants to feel stuck and no one wants to feel like, you know, everything was has to come to an end because it can't. You have to keep moving forward.
Yes, sir. Uh, without saying names, is there one case that really stands out?
Oh boy, there's been quite a few. Um, there's one that was so horrible in the way that the spouse passed away that, yeah, it's one of those cases that sticks with you. And you know when I pass by a certain way or drive a certain way or I see a certain type of truck, it reminds me of that, and I think about the family and how they're doing and hope they're doing well. But yeah, it does stick with you. I think that I'm sure most people think as attorneys that we are uh, don't have
Robots.
emotion or we don't
Yeah.
care, but we really do care, and it's something that you do have to be careful with too, though, because you can't. You still have to maintain your objectivity, but you really do care for these folks. I mean, how could you not? If you don't, you really aren't going to do a good job for them. And yeah, they some of them really do stick with you, and you'll never forget. There's no question about it. And unfortunately, I think for a lot of us attorneys that do injury cases, wrongful death, we see a lot of really horrible videos and pictures that I wish I could scrub from my memory.
How do you balance that work home relationship? Is there anything that you do to, get your mind off of the case or?
Well, I'd like to say it's as simple as exercise and eat right and all those good things, but really for me, it's even if it's even simpler than that. It's more straightforward. Every morning, I think it's important when I take time to read the Bible and clear my head and think about the blessings and be grateful for what we have and what's left and what we can do with moving forward. So I think it's just really that simple. Prayer, being humble, being grateful, knowing that, you know, people do really go through some tragedies in their lives, in their families. And, that again, that's a really big responsibility that we're here for, to try to repair and repatch and rebuild people so that they can move on.
Yes, sir. Faith in God is very important. I agree. And I know again that you have worked on all sides of the courtroom. What do you believe is working well in our justice system, especially when it pertains to personal injury? And what do you think needs reform?
Well, that's a really big and important question. I do think that here in Illinois, we have very good jury instructions. We have good case law on the prosecution of personal injury cases. So we're very fortunate. Some states aren't as fortunate with the jury instructions, the damage instructions that we have and that are allowed. I think overall, what I would like to see is there's a real part of the cases, the discovery phase, where I believe uh, there's too many games being played, there's too much dishonesty, and there isn't full disclosure. And you shouldn't have to ask and ask and ask and file multiple motions to compel your opponent to turn over things in their possession that are relevant to prosecuting the case and that they have in their possession. So that's one thing I'd like to see change. Not sure how we do it. We make these rules and we make it clear that there's supposed to be full disclosure, and yet we often find three-quarters of the way during discovery or sometimes in the eve of trial, oh look, there's a video. Oh look, we have these photos. Oh, there was a report. Oh, there was a witness. That's not how the justice system is supposed to work. Most of the things that we have in place for prosecuting criminal and civil cases in this country, our system is phenomenal. So we can't allow the games that are played sometimes on non-disclosures to affect the way justice is administered in America.
Yes, sir. And obviously, you've earned quite a reputation. I have gone through your website when I did my research for this podcast, and I do see several seven-figure verdicts, millions and millions of dollars. Um, do you prefer to go through the process of voir dire, or would you rather look to settle before entering into a jury trial?
You know, we're always open to listen if it's in good faith. But to be honest with you, I think the best way to get the best settlement is be prepared for trial and be ready to go. And I always love talking with the potential jurors because I think it is the only opportunity you get to talk with them and get to have a understanding of where they're at and what they think, and all of the different types of experiences that they bring to the courtroom, and that's what makes it truly unique if you think about it. And you get
Hmm.
12 jurors, and they can come from different backgrounds, and they'll come together. And I've never seen a jury uh, not do its uh, duty and really listen to the evidence and take the time and apply it to the law that's given to them by the judge. They do a tremendous job. It's phenomenal. And getting to talk to them and be a part of that I think it's just something special. I'm so glad that that's been a part of my career.
Yes, sir. I asked that question because the answer changes from interview to interview when I speak to personal injury attorneys. Some guys are, all in, and some guys are like, no, we're avoiding trial. If we can negotiate a settlement, we're going to go that route. But that being
Well, never
said,
avoid trial. I mean, trial's the fun part. It's like playing the Super Bowl, right? I mean, you want to play that game, and that's fine, and be ready, and I think trying cases is we're losing that as an art form, I think, in the country a little bit. And that's a shame. I think the young attorneys don't have the same opportunities to try cases because of the expenses, because what's involved, and sometimes just the sheer magnitude of the cases. Maybe you need a more experienced attorney. But I fear that if we don't keep trying cases and utilizing the jury system, that maybe it gets packed away, or maybe it just is looked at as an archaic device. But I don't think it should ever be looked at that way. I think it is the best and the most complete way to get justice in any way, shape, or form in a courtroom.
Excellent. And you've held leadership roles within the legal community. And I remember one of the answers that you told me in the beginning. You said it was your uncle that served as some inspiration. Was he a mentor as well? And how important is mentorship and professional responsibility in shaping the next generation of trial attorneys?
Well, I think it's so important that I think if attorneys don't have a mentor or someone they can call, I think they're going to struggle. And I think that this notion that somehow, an attorney can just hang up a shingle and do their own thing and figure it out, I think it'd be really difficult. And I think it's unnecessary. But um, it's so important to be able to have someone you can pick up the phone and say, hey, I have this witness, or I have this legal argument, or I have this, what do you think? Because if you don't do that and you don't have someone to tell you, hey, maybe that's not a great idea, you lose your objectivity. So I think it's so important that young attorneys, or any attorney really, has a mentor or has a group that they can rely on to say, hey, I have this issue. And not to do that, I think you're really limiting your odds or your chances of becoming a really good attorney. You really need to bounce these things off of other people. So, at the Will County Bar, we've implemented a mentorship program, and it's been a very good program. It's successful. I think they're going to be expanding the program. So I think it's just vital. And you have to have somebody outside of your firm or your practice group that you can talk to freely, so somebody, maybe someone's looking at you going, oh, that's really a dumb idea, but nobody wants to be told that. But sometimes you need to be told that before you do something dumb. But I get it, where there's apprehension with the younger attorneys. They don't want to seem like they don't know what they're doing around the older attorneys. But we all need that person that we could pick up the phone and say, hey, what do you think of this? Now, I was really fortunate. My uncle was exactly all of those things. Even when I was a young prosecutor, asking him questions, how do I get this into evidence, and why is this important, things of that nature. So I, I don't know how you do it without a mentor. I think it would be extremely hard.
Great. I understand. And you have decades of experience under your belt. Do you make yourself available to the younger attorneys? Are you a mentor to attorneys at this point as well?
No question, younger, older, same age, my door's open, and encourage people to come down and you know talk things out. I think that's the best way to do it. That way you get the power of experience, wisdom, and practical application. I think you have to be like that. You have to make yourself available, and I think that's important. And it's important for my attorneys to know that I'm available too. And I still like working on the cases 7 days a week, just like when I was a young attorney.
Yes, sir. That being said, what do you think is the most important lesson the courtroom has taught you? Because again, you have such an interesting background. You had great mentorship. You really have run the gamut. What do you think is the most important takeaway from everything that you've learned?
Well, I think the courtroom has taught me to be humble, and to not take anything for granted. When you're going into court, you have to be prepared for a lot of different outcomes, and you have to be prepared for maybe uh, an opponent that doesn't really care for you, or maybe a judge that doesn't like your argument, maybe a judge that just woke up on the wrong side of the bed and doesn't like the suit you're wearing that day. So I think you have to learn how to deal with all of those things and be humble, be prepared, and always zealously advocate for your client. But yeah, I think just being humble that you're a part of this system that's been going on for hundreds, years, and to be a part of that, to walk into a courtroom and represent somebody and go seek justice for them, that's really a humbling experience.
Yes, sir. Uh, Looking ahead, what challenges do you see facing trial attorneys, excuse me, over the next decade? Is it the implementation of technology, AI? Is it the fact that the younger guys, like you said, or the younger gals are not used to that face-to-face interaction? What challenges do you see facing the younger ones coming up?
Well, yeah, the challenge that the younger attorneys are going to have is just to get into the courtroom and try these cases to make sure that the skills and the art of trying a case and advocacy aren't lost, that we don't lose centuries worth of wisdom and knowledge on how to represent people competently in court. So I think that's the challenge, to make sure that we're getting trials, that there's trials that are being held in court. I just don't see that many trials being scheduled throughout the year, and that's unfortunate. So we have to get back to a system that doesn't punish you for going to trial, and shouldn't be absurdly expensive. It should reward you for going to trial, and you should want to try those cases. It'll make you a better lawyer. It'll make you have a better understanding of the evidence and the things that you're doing along the way to get to trial.
Yes. Uh, for our younger listeners who may be considering law school, especially those who maybe want to aspire to become a trial lawyer, what advice would you give to someone contemplating entering law school today?
Well, this is going to sound a little strange. My advice would be go work in a restaurant, go work at a department store, go work at Starbucks, go work anywhere where you have constant interaction with the public and other human beings. Why? Because it's unpredictable and you have to be able to adjust and be able to speak and communicate with all types of different people on all types of different levels. And you have to be able to do that without seeming condescending, without being a jerk, without all of those things. So, and you know what? Sometimes those people aren't going to treat you very nicely, and you have to learn how to deal with that. So I think that my advice would be go work in the service industry, go work with the public to the point of where you're going to see all types of people from all different walks of life. That's going to make you a better attorney overall when you have an understanding of what it means to serve, all right, and not being served all the time. So I think that any of those opportunities. I know it sounds funny because maybe people think like, well, I should probably go sit in the library and study forever. I should do, I should just study my law books or things like that. But law only has any practical use for us if it's applicable to everyday life. So if you don't understand human nature, if you don't understand the laws of human probability, then you're missing out on the whole way we apply the law to human behavior.
Do you think that's the one big skill, the ability to interact that separates great trial lawyers from good ones?
No question. I think you have to be able to connect with just about anybody. I think from the person that's sweeping the floor to the person that owns the restaurant in that situation, right? So my uncle always had a great saying, and he always reminded me, always smile and always say hello to everybody you meet. He said, I don't care if they're the janitor, I don't care if it's the chief judge. You treat people the same way. And he was right. And I've always tried to do that. I've always tried to include that not only in my practice, but in my life. Treat people the same, and if you do that, I think you have a better chance of connecting and learning and understanding how people are wired, how they think, how they feel, and how they emote and how they see things. And that'll make you a better trial lawyer, about just about better than anything else I could tell you to do other than go try the cases, because it is like muscle memory, right? It's just like
Mhm.
throwing a football. You got to throw the football and you got to practice to be any good. Same with being an attorney. You have to practice and practice. It's called the practice of law, right? It's not called the game of law, or it's not called anything else. It's a constant learning process, and it's a constant evolving process in your growth. So you have to do those things, but they should be fun. It should be something you want to do, and if you want to do it, it never seems like work.
Yes, excellent advice. Definitely words to live by. And for those listening that would like to reach out to you, learn more, retain your services, what's the best way to do so? What's your best contact number, website?
Sure, easy to get a hold of me. You can just call my number, 815-730-1977, or just put in Frank at rcklawfirm.com. So that's Frank at rcklawfirm.com. Send me an email. I'll be more than happy to respond.
Perfect. I'll be sure to highlight your number, your website, and email for you. And Frank, I really have to thank you for sharing your journey, your insight, your experience. Definitely a lot of pearls of wisdom there. Very few attorneys I know can speak with authority from every side of the courtroom, and your career is a powerful reminder that justice looks different depending on obviously where you stand. But like you said, integrity must always remain constant. I want to thank you very much for joining us today, Frank.
Well, thanks, Sal. Thanks for having me, and let's make sure that justice prevails.
Thank you for listening to the Top Attorneys Podcast. The Top Attorneys celebrates the achievements of leading attorneys across the nation. To be featured, send a message or visit www.topattorneys.us.